Leiva failed to name members of his cabinet by this Thursday deadline. The 32nd Inter-sessional meeting of heads of governments of the Caribbean community concluded this Thursday, having discussed major issues facing the region as it works to recover from the COVID-19 pandemic. Hello, welcome to From the South. I am Janet Perez Moya from the teleSUR headquarters in Caracas, Venezuela. Stay with us. Brazil's COVID-19 death toll surpassed 250,000 on Thursday, making it the country with the second highest toll in the world after the United States. While cases and daily deaths in many other countries have declined, COVID figures in Latin America's largest nations remain high. Governors and mayors are independently imposing closures or restrictions on activity to contain the virus and to manage mass vaccination programs, largely without federal support. The state of Sao Paulo and Bahia have recently introduced curfews, asking residents to stay home at night, but experts stress that these measures are too little too late.
This new variant came, and it is very strong and highly transmissive. If we hadn't interrupted people's contact in a more drastic way, we wouldn't have another way to contain the growing wave. And our health system is no longer bearing up under the demand.
It's an incredible feeling to be able to be vaccinated, knowing that we are doing the right thing for our health, and everyone should do the same, wear a mask, wash their hands.
The Supreme Court of Justice of Colombia declared inadmissible the charge filed against President Iván Duque for the presence of U.S. troops in the country. The decision was announced by the Civil Chamber of the Supreme Court. The initiative was previously rejected by the Higher Court of Cundinamarca in December 2020. The charge filed by an individual citizen stated that President Iván Duque violated the right for peace in the country and South America by allowing the entry of U.S. troops to the national territory. The document also argued that the foreign military presence sought to provoke instability in neighboring Venezuela and the rest of the region. A young man lost his left eye in the Colombian capital Bogotá this Wednesday in the midst of protests against police brutality. The mobilizations started in front of the university to protest against police brutality and impunity for crimes committed by officers of the Mobile Anti-Disturbance Squadron. In the midst of the police repression of demonstrators, Gareth Stella Forero suffered an injury that led to the loss of his left eye. The district government secretary's office assured that it will provide legal and psychological support to the young man. Meanwhile, alternative media and social movements present during the repression stressed that the squadron intentionally fired directly into the face of the protesters. To mark a national day against police brutality in Colombia, several social and human rights organizations are protesting against the impunity surrounding the killings of protesters by the Mobile Anti-Disturbance Squadron and the violation of the human rights by the police. Our correspondent Hernan Tovar brings us more details.
These footprints, painted on the streets of downtown Bogota, are part of the activities carried out by human rights youth groups, social and victims organizations against police brutality and excess in Colombia on the 22nd anniversary of the creation of this mad mobile disturbance squad, which, according to these organizations, has killed more than 45 protesters.
We consider that this is a criminal apparatus. They are murderers. They have done it systematically, and the only solution neither their training nor their reform, but their elimination. We are also requesting a substantial reform of the police that also includes, of course, training in human rights. Also, all crimes committed by the police are not judged by the military criminal justice system, but they are judged by the civil justice system.
These groups and human rights organizations state that between 2017 and 2019, 289 homicides were registered at the hands of members of the police. They also registered 39,613 injured people and denounced that in 102 cases acts of sexual violence have been committed. Therefore, they call the attention of both the institutions and the justice system to investigate these facts. Of all these acts, only 2 cases have been sentenced.
We have had a record of more than 40,000 investigations launched by the Prosecutor's Office for Police Abuses. That is, overall, for all police abuse. These investigations have not made progress, specifically in the week of action against police violence, linked to the Anti-Disturbances Squadron, which goes out into the streets to beat and injure people and so on. What we're seeking in the first place is to have the squadron shut down. Secondly, to investigate the crimes committed by the squadron. More than 45 young protesters have been killed. We call to conduct an investigation into the mutilation of more than 27 young people who in the last year lost their eyes due to rubber bullets fired directly at their eyes.
These actions that aim to raise awareness and remind people of the police abuse and systematic crimes committed by ESMAD reached the site where Dylan Cruz fell, a young protester who was killed by a riot squad agent on November 23, 2019, and who has become an example of struggle and resistance to government policies.
Dylan was killed for participating in a march in which he was demanding the right to free and quality public higher education. But in Colombia, asking for the right to education, for the right to work, asking for the right to health, for the possibility to peaceful protest, calling not to repress people who denounce human rights violations. This has become a risky task, and we are not fully aware of all the people who have been killed.
The activities include a photographic gallery which shows the victims caused by the actions of the mobile anti-disturbance squad and members of the police in general, as a way to raise awareness among the population and demand justice in the face of the impunity that reigns in these cases. Hernán Darío Tovar, teleSUR, Bogotá.
The people of Guatemala commemorate the National Day for the Dignification of Victims of the Internal Armed Conflict this Thursday. On this occasion, the families of the victims of the conflict gathered to demand justice. A major ceremony was held at the National Palace of Cultures to pay tribute to those killed, followed by a march to the congressional headquarters. According to the report by the Commission for Historical Clarification presented in February 1999, 93% of the massacres that took place in the country during the internal conflict were executed by the army, while the rest were attributed to guerrilla force and unidentified armed groups. Libya's newly appointed Prime Minister Abdul Hamid Mohamed Dibagh was expected to name members of his cabinet by Thursday's scheduled deadline. Instead, he only shared proposed guidelines for the selection of cabinet members and outline of his priorities in the coming period.
Regarding the government, we relied on consulting with our brothers, starting with the Political Dialogue Committee, Geneva Committee, and then the House of Representatives. And then we consulted with the State Council and many sectors and components, which in this tight period we tried to contact, consult and ask for aid from them.
French President Emmanuel Macron said Thursday he is confident European Union leaders will agree on common standards to allow international travel during this summer, including by introducing vaccine certificates amid other measures.
As I have pointed out, controls might be necessary at certain internal borders of the European Union, primarily to combat the spread of variants, but the general principle must remain the preservation of movement of cross-border commuters and truckers, simply to avoid fragmenting living areas and breaking supply chains. We will only be able to defeat this virus in a long term if we manage to develop a vaccination campaign throughout the world and particularly among our African neighbors and friends. As we know, there are 6.5 million healthcare workers on the African continent. This means mobilizing 13 million doses. These doses represent 0.43% of those ordered by the European Union, the United States, Canada, and Japan. This is a minimal effort.
Syria will begin vaccination health workers across the country against COVID-19 starting next week. The vaccine doses are reported to have come from China. Authorities have also authorized the use of Russia's Sputnik V vaccine, according to the Syrian embassy in Moscow. The government is also set to receive jabs as part of the World Health Organization COVAX initiative after signing up last month. The World Health Organization said on Wednesday that the first shipment of AstraZeneca's vaccines will arrive in Syria northwest by the end of the month.
an amount of the vaccine from a friendly state and with direct guidance from the president, Dr. Bashar al-Assad, and in order to protect the health staff working in the Syrian Republic, COVID-19 vaccinations for health staff will start at the beginning of the next week.
On Thursday, Prime Minister of Barbados, Mia Mottley, announced that the country had surpassed 25,000 COVID-19 vaccinations, totaling 12.5% of Barbados' adult population.
Mark the fact that last night in the country we reached 25,000 vaccinations. We surpassed it. And it is a moment that we are grateful for. And I want to thank those Barbadians who have come forward over the course, it's less than 2 weeks, that I hope I can address the country next week with some better news. But this is a moment where more and more Barbadians are understanding that if we want to turn the corner, if we want, like the rest of the world, we see what is happening in Israel, we see what is happening in the UAE, we see what is happening even in the United Kingdom. If we want to turn the corner on this dreaded pandemic, then we ourselves need to strengthen ourselves. And we also need to step up to the plate.
This Thursday saw the second day of the 32nd Inter-sessional meeting of heads of government of the Caribbean community, meeting virtually to discuss key issues facing the region. The meeting, chaired by the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago and CARICOM Chairman Kate Rowley, focused debates on the key aspects for the region, such as economic recovery, containing of COVID-19 pandemic, and ensuring access to vaccines. According to the participating heads of governments, the economic recovery plan is based on the implementation of a joint tourism policy. At the same time, they call on the developed countries to provide equitable access to vaccines. In this sense, they announced that they will intensify requests to the World Health Organization to provide doses through the COVAX mechanism. Also on the agenda was the ongoing political crisis in Haiti.
CARICOM region has a number of heads who are in close communication with the government of Cuba. And what was yesterday discussed and what came out very clearly is that virtually all, bar probably 2 states, indicated that they would only use vaccines which are approved by the WHO. And of course, while we know that Cuba has a good reputation in the medical sphere and is developing some vaccines, unless those vaccines get WHO approval, all CARICOM countries have indicated that we'll await such an approval before we attempt to use it in our populations.
The Caribbean Development Bank is projecting regional economic growth of the 3.8% in 2021 as the region gradually recovers from the COVID-19 pandemic. The projection made in part one of the bank's regional report titled 2020 Review and 2021 Outlook, which was released this Thursday, comes after an extremely difficult year in which the economies of the bank's 19 borrowing members countries contracted by 12.8% on average. Countries with significant tourism industries, such as the Bahamas, Barbados, Belize, Cayman Islands, Dominica, and Grenada, were hard hit by the more than 70% drop in the overnight visitors in 2020, which spilled over the effects of other economic sectors. While the bank does not expect a return to 2019 tourism level, this year tourism-dependent nations will experience some economic recovery on their pen by a gradual return to tourists suspect in the 4th quarter of the year and focus efforts to roll out mass vaccination programs throughout the region. In Haiti, authorities suggest changing the date of the constitutional referendum to June after being scheduled for April 25th. The spokesman of the Prime Minister in charge of electoral issues, Mathias Pierre, reported that the proposal to daily consultation for a new constitution is due to the technical requirements imposed by the United Nations Development Programme, the UNDP. In agreement with the multilateral organizations, the spokesman hopes the measures will help to ensure peaceful elections and commit to provide the required materials. We now welcome Professor Danny Chao, Senior Research Fellow at the Council of Hemispheric Affairs, who is currently in Haiti and reporting on the situation there. When was the constitutional referendum first proposed and why it is convenient in the midst of the current political crisis for the President Jovenel Moise? He responds like this.
Jovenel Moise has no constitutional mandate. He's made things up as he goes. It's clear that the masses of people in Haiti have spoken. Jovenel Moise comes up with a new excuse every day. Now he's trying to say that the people should wait until September. He's making it up on the fly. Nobody in Haiti believes in the words of Jovenel Moise and PHTK, the ruling bald-headed party, which has continually deceived the people. There's going to be another massive march of all sectors of Haitian society this Sunday. It should be one of the biggest marches yet, and all sectors of Haitian society are demanding that Jovenel Moise leave power.
Jovenel Moise's presidential term should have end on February 7, yet he continues to climb onto power, insisting that his term ends on February 7, 2022. What are the political benefits of changing the date to the referendum? And is there also a possibility that the general elections scheduled from September this year will postpone? Danny shall respond like this.
To understand that he's trying to buy his time with this lie about elections in September. And we have to remember what's happened in Haitian history. Let's go back to 1915 to 1934, the U.S. military occupation of Haiti. Let's go back to the two coups d'etats that the U.S. and the quote-unquote international community, which is nothing more than an international cabal, has carried out against Jean-Bertrand Aristide. Every time the Haitian people have had hopes for a true democracy, a people's democracy, yon petit espoir, a small hope, as they say here, the US, the UN, the OAS has continually intervened. Right now, they're trying to rule through the PHTK. This is the ruling party. This is a party that's doing the work of the US.
You can find this and many other stories in our website at telesurenglish.net. Thank you for watching.